It shuts down your prefrontal cortex. It throws rationalizations at you that make total sense. And we've all been there. We've all been there. How many times, as much willpower as you think that you can exercise, have you said to yourself, well, just this last time?
Mitch, how did you find Carnivore?
How did I find Carnivore? How much time have you got, Dave? Are we good for 3-4 hours here, or we need to keep this to an hour? Because it's a long story, and I've told that story many times. But to understand how I got to Carnivore, you pretty much need to hear it, and I'll try to give you the abbreviated short version of it. Okay, I was always a fat kid, always put on weight, always a sugar addict, severe carbohydrate addict. In 1972, Robert Atkins wrote a book called The Atkins Diet Revolution. I think I bought the first copy that ever hit the bookshelves back in 72. I read that book, and I mean, I read it because I'm very interested in biochemistry. Even though I'm not a doctor, I know more than most doctors I meet about how our physiology works, how all the different pathways work. I can have an intelligent conversation with Bart Kay, Dave Feldman, and all of those guys. No problem. I'm curious about this. I've been at this my whole life. 22 years ago, I wrote a book called Taming the Beast Within. And it was all about how we got here, how our behavior formed over hundreds of millions of years from our predecessors. And this is not a new thing for me. But I started on low carb, and I always was successful. I was always successful. I would stick to it like a fanatic. I would lose the weight. I'd go from like 200 pounds down to 155, maybe 160, which was kind of what I had set as my goal weight. And then when I got there, like most people, when they've reached a weight that they think they'd be happy with, they say, let's celebrate. I've lost all that weight. I can treat myself now. I can go out and have a little ice cream now. I can have that pizza now. Well, that's great if you're not a carb addict. Unfortunately, I think 80% of us on this planet are carb addicts. There's an evolutionary backstory to why we're carb addicts. It's because that was our survival food. Even before we were humans, it was our animal predecessors' survival food. And when we failed at the hunt, of course, we needed food. And there was some carbs around, some bushes with berries certain times a year. And we developed the pathways to metabolize them. And that's what we have in every cell of our body. And those cells work the same way the cells worked hundreds of millions of years ago. Without getting too technical, we have things like the Randall cycle, which pretty much is the switch that decides whether you're going to be burning fat as primary fuel or sugar. The pathways that we developed for sugar also gave us the impetus to never have never get satisfied or satiated, to urge us to gorge on the sugar. Since we needed it, it was a quick burning fuel. It was an emergency fuel. We had an imperative to just eat as much of it as we could. And we still have that urge. So when you're eating sugar, you never get satisfied. You just keep gorging yourself. When you eat the protein and fat, your satiety hormones kick in. And so I learned all this stuff. And I also learned that I was a carbohydrate addict. And I swore the next time I lost the weight, I wasn't going to bounce up and down again. That teaches me to swear. Didn't work. So next thing I know, I'm back around 200 pounds again. Didn't take long. You put it on a lot faster than you lose it. And I started looking at all these other new diets. And there was no shortage of low carb diets back then. You had the zone Barry Sears. You had Lawrence Cordain with the paleo and protein power. You had one after another, kind of Mediterranean. And I was successful on every one I tried. And I think I did it 10 or 15 times. And I lost the weight. And then I would always gain it back. And I'm trying to figure out, how is this happening to me? My desire was to lose the weight once and for all, like build the house and then just live in it, without having to rebuild the house every 6 months. But it didn't work out. And I started to put two and two together and decided that the reason was I never cured my addiction to carbohydrates and sugar. We use the term food addiction. It's a misnomer. We're not addicted to food. None of us are addicted to ribeyes or fatty meat. We're not addicted. We're not hawking our mother's jewelry at the pawn shop to raise enough money to go buy a ribeye. The sugar is what we're addicted to. The glucose, which of course is all carbohydrates, the pastas, the breads, whatever. As soon as it hits the amylase in your mouth, it breaks down into simple glucose molecules and you're screwed. So it dawned on me that my problem, and most people's problem in trying to maintain a weight loss, is their addiction. So I started studying addiction as a general topic. I started reading a lot of books on it, studying, the science of it and how to cure it. And one thing became completely evident to me, and that was there's only one way to actually get rid of an addiction. And that one way is abstinence, complete and total abstinence. The word moderation plays no role when it comes to a carbohydrate addict or an alcoholic or a heroin addict or a crack addict. You can't moderate. You can't tell an alcoholic, well, just have a half an ounce a day. Just moderate it. No, they'll dive right into the bottle if they do that. That's the power of these addictions. So I said, this carnivore thing that I've been hearing about sounds like it's got the best chance for me. It's got the best chance of curing this carbohydrate addiction that I have. But it means complete and total abstinence from carbs. It means no cheating. And it was scary at first. And it's scary for a lot of people that start carnivore. These people, the thought of giving up something that has given them so much comfort and pleasure all their life, eating those foods. There's a reason it gives us comfort and pleasure. It encourages us to do it. That's how the subconscious makes us do things we don't consciously want to do. The subconscious is controlling our thoughts. If it thinks that if it doesn't get sugar in the next few hours, that the body's going to die, it shuts down your prefrontal cortex. It throws rationalizations at you that make total sense. And we've all been there. We've all been there. How many times, as much willpower as you think that you can exercise, have you said to yourself, well, just this last time, it's okay. I can do it just this one more time. I promise, I absolutely promise I am not going to do it again. Just this one last time. And that leads
I'll start tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll start on Monday. Oh, wait, it's almost the end of the month. Let's just start the first of the month. Wait, it's December. Let's just start after the first of the year. It's lame. And we buy it because when you're running on sugar and you start running low, terrible things happen to your body. Your blood sugar plummets. You start approaching hypoglycemia. You get weak. You get the shakes. You're running for candy bars. That never happens when you have switched your metabolism to fat burning. You got enough fuel on you to live, most people, to live for 6 months. When your insulin is high, your fat cells are closed. The transporters that let the fat out are closed. You're in fat storage mode. If you don't get your insulin down, you'll never lose any body fat. Sugar, you burn what you eat. When you become a fat burner, you burn what's stored on your body first. You don't eat the fat. You don't burn the fat that you just ate in that steak. It takes the fat that it needs to run your body. And you can go for days. And that's how come carnivores, once they get fat adapted and get used to it, can fast for 2-3 days. A sugar burner can't fast for 2 friggin' hours from 8 o'clock in the morning till the 10 o'clock coffee break. They can't. So I said to myself, this just makes so much sense. It's not rocket science. It's just chemistry. So I did the carnivore thing. I started the carnivore thing, and I started it on August 1st, 2 years ago. And since then, I have not had 1 gram of carbs, 1 piece of fruit, 1 leaf of lettuce, 1 plant, nothing. Bacon and eggs, steak, hamburger, fish, chicken, some seafood, nothing. Took 30 days where I started to wake up my fat burning pathways. I was using lipolysis instead of glycolysis in my cells. I was burning body fat. I still had my cravings, but they had reduced about 80 to 90%. They had reduced enough where I could control them. And the longer I stayed in the carnivore lifestyle, the easier it became to control them, until I noticed about a year ago, I had no more cravings. I had no more thoughts of those foods. The thought of eating that stuff disgusted me. I now look at it as poison. If I see somebody eating a bagel or an ice cream cone, I feel sorry for them. I want to grab them by the neck, and shake them. Say, do you know what you're doing to yourself? You know what you're doing? But you can't do that. All of us in this diet space have at one time or another tried to play evangelist. We have a friend or a relative. We're going to fix that person. No. This is a decision each one of us has to come to on our own, and it requires an education. So here I am, 1 year into carnivore. I'm already down to 138 pounds, which is what I weigh now. And I have weighed for a year and a half, and it never fluctuates, no matter how much I eat. I'm 5'10". People say, Mitch, you're too skinny. Do you know how good that sounds when somebody, after a lifetime of being fat, how good it sounds when somebody calls me skinny? I say, thank you. I appreciate that. My body evidently likes this weight. There's nothing I can do to affect it anyway. If I could eat less food, more food, wouldn't matter. My body decides this is its ideal weight, and it maintains it. One of the big pushes I have on my channel is I tell people, stay off the scale. The scale is irrelevant. Who cares what you weigh? That's not why you're doing carnivore. But you tell that to 99.9% of people who go on a diet. They're going on a diet for weight loss. They're not going on a diet for health reasons. But when you fix your health, magically your weight just takes care of itself without any conscious thought or any particular interaction on your part. We don't have the power to decide what our body weighs without torturing ourselves with ridiculously small amounts of food, ridiculously too much exercise. And we may lose some weight, but we can never keep that off. And when that happens to us, we've trashed our metabolism in the process, and we come out worse for it, and we always gain it back. So you asked me a short question, how'd you come to carnivore? And as I usually do, I give you the long answer. So that's how I found carnivore. Very circuitous route.
Nice. So first of all, let me say happy anniversary. So we just passed your 2-year anniversary, yeah?
2 years, yeah, just a couple of days ago, 2-year carniversary. I did a live stream and celebrated it. And yeah, it's amazing. And I love this. I have never feel deprived And this is why I'm not a big fan of keto. And I make a lot of, I don't want to say enemies, but a lot of people don't want to listen to me because they want to be keto. They want to hang on to those last few grams of carbs. It's like being an alcoholic and finding an excuse to hang on to that half an ounce of whiskey a day. It doesn't work. Not for 80% of the people, because it triggers your cravings and you have carb creep. You say, oh, once a week, I'm just going to have a little of this. And then it becomes twice a week. And then it becomes 3 times, then every day, then twice a day. And next thing you know, you're 200 pounds again. So I'm not an advocate of keto for most people. And the thrust of my whole channel and my big message is you're an addict. Start treating this as an addict and you have some shot at maintaining success over the long term. Most people. And it's working. It's working. I've got followers of mine that write me comments saying, that they're succeeding now where they failed their whole life. It wasn't until they gave up that last 10 grams of carbs. Because you know how the keto mindset works. I'm allowed to have 20 grams of carbs a day, right? You think I'm going to waste those carbs on broccoli or Brussels sprouts? Are you crazy? I'm going to try to find something that as closely resembles pastries and candy and cookies, even though they have artificial sweeteners, and try to have as close as I can have to that experience of comfort that I got when I was eating those real foods. I'm going to have carnivore pizza crust and make pizzas with tomato sauce on them, but only 20 grams of carbs. And by eating those imitation foods, you're not fooling your brain. Your brain knows damn well that it's addicted to that because it gets sugar from it. And you're not giving it the sugar. You're playing a dirty trick on it. You're making it think it's getting the sugar, but it's not. It's going through something called a cephalic phase response. You ever heard of that? It's injecting insulin into your body to handle the sugar that it thinks is coming, that never comes. All that extra insulin does for you is crams what sugar you have in your blood into your cells. Your blood sugar plummets, and the next thing you're diving for the ice cream and the candy bars. The keto foods that they sell at Sam's Club and Costco and all these places are time bombs for anybody trying to do this. And more people, I think, are discovering that, yes, they're addicts. And yes, they have to abstain from all of this stuff. They have to not only cure the addiction, they have to get over the habit of eating those foods, of eating something that is like pizza, holding that slice in your hand. Just the habit of that will get you back into it. So there's a few of us on YouTube. Robert Sivas, he handles the Carb Addiction doc. But very few people come at it from that angle. And I'm 77 years old now. It took me a lifetime to figure that out. And that's what I think is important to try to share. A lot of people don't want to hear it. They're not giving up their treats. They're not giving up their sweets. It's just not. Can't help them. Few of them succeed, but maybe they're not flaming carb addicts. Maybe they can control it. Anyway, that's where I come from.
Yeah. So for me, I found that I'm the same as everyone with keto. Snacks would eventually creep in, that 20 grams of carbs ceases being the broccoli or the spinach, and it starts to be like the stuff with almond flour in it and all that kind of thing. But the other thing is, I just hate managing stuff when it comes to food. And if I've got to manage numbers and I've got to think, well, what are my macros and all that kind of thing, it just becomes frustrating. And one of the things that's awesome about Carnivore is you don't have to think about any of that. It's just, is it an animal product? Okay, I'm good to go.
It's a no-brainer. As long as you make sure that you learn how much fat is in the different foods you eat. So you're pretty sure you're getting enough fat. And I do that by eating bacon and eggs every day. Every day I eat 4 to 6 eggs and a half a pound of fat bacon. And that's enough fat for the day right there. So if I eat a ribeye for dinner and it's not the fattiest ribeye, I'm okay. But I don't count anything. And everybody is so used to measuring and counting. You need an accountant to do that stuff. And it's futile. Our chemistry is way too complicated for us, mere mortals, to micromanage molecule by molecule what happens in every one of our cells 100,000 times a second. We cannot manage that. All we can do, all we have the power to effect is give it the raw materials that the machinery needs. Leave it alone. Let that programming that evolved over hundreds of millions of years in our genes, in our genetics, in our epigenetics, let that do what it knows how to do. And it found out what worked over hundreds of millions of years of what worked got passed on, what didn't work got deselected and went extinct. We as living creatures today are at the end of the chain of hundreds of millions of creatures that were our ancestors, all the way back to the first living cell. We're all related to that. We all came from that. And the path from that to us, to every living thing on the planet today, is an unbroken path with the programming that got us here. I never forget that. I never forget that. The odds of that are so high, of every one of your predecessors having lived long enough to reproduce. Think about that. Every one of them, probably hundreds of millions. As humans, we probably have 100 or more thousand generations of just Homo sapien. Think about what came before. We're still running at a basic cellular level on the same chemistry that a bacteria's got. It has DNA. It makes proteins. It has cellular respiration. It burns fuel. Needs oxygen and water. At that level, it really hasn't changed. Now, I can't expect everybody that wants to go on a carnivore diet to become a physiologist and, learn this stuff. But for me, learning it was an epiphany. It was an aha moment. It just brought it all together and made it make sense. And that's why I'm so firmly convinced that, like Ken Berry always says, carnivore is the way. Carnivore is the way. I don't measure anything. I don't even like blood tests. People ask me, well, what are your ketones? I go, who cares? Why would I care what my ketone level is? My levels of everything are changing on a millisecond basis as my body chemistry is doing its thing. Well, what's your cholesterol? Who cares? It's right where all of that fabulous programming wants it to be. Who are you, I tell them, to think that you have the intelligence to screw with that fabulous knowledge that's contained in our genetics, in our programming. So I don't do anything. I go to the doctor once a year and get blood tests, and everything's okay. My cholesterol is my LDL is like 340. My doctor has like mini strokes every time I see her, but she knows me well enough, and I've lectured her on biochemistry enough where basically I go to the VA. She now knows, she says to me, well, Mitch, the VA says I have to recommend a statin for you. So I'm writing down here in your record that I recommended it and you don't want it. I said, fair enough. I don't want you to get fired because I won't take a statin. And then I tell her why those statins are killing people, putting them in nursing homes early with early onset dementia, ruining their brains, giving them diabetes. I mean, you talk about studies. We have so many studies, phony studies that the other side always shows us. They use relative risk in the data. They tell you that Crestor is going to improve your chances of having a heart attack by 38%, when it's really like 0.4% in absolute numbers, from insignificant to slightly less insignificant is what it really amounts to. The real tests that we have with real numbers that that the medical community doesn't dispute is that people on statins double their risk of diabetes. And since diabetes is one of the largest actual risk factors for heart disease, it just stands to reason that by taking a statin, you're doubling your risk of heart disease. In what reality does that make any sense? You're supposed to be taking that to reduce your risk of heart disease. I don't know. It's maddening. And we're a merry little band of misfits, those of us that are carnivores, hardly significant in numbers when you think about it, trying to save our own lives and helps certain people. And we're being demonized, and that's politics. There's nothing we can do about that. We're not going to change the world. The world is set. I don't think we're going to fix this, Dave. I don't think that anytime soon the government and the medical community and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Loma Linda Medical School and all the drug companies and all the food companies are going to wake up one day and go, never mind, we were wrong. We're going to stop manufacturing sugar. We're going to start raising cows now. That'll never happen. It took 100 years for us to get in this mess. How long is it going to take to unwind this?
Yeah, the global economy would collapse, right?
Oh, man, half of our economy in this country, in the States here, half the economy is based around medicine and food. When you think about how much we spend $4 or $5 trillion a year in medical costs now, how much do we spend on food? And it's not just the food. It's the ancillary industries. There, we have to have stores to sell the food. Those stores need employees. We need fleets of trucks and trains and airplanes to bring the food from the factories to the stores. Half of our country is employed in one direct or indirect manner by a system that is slowly poisoning the human race. And I'll debate that point with anybody. I mean, anybody, but they won't debate. People won't actually have a honest debate with you. They'll just start throwing nonsense at you. Well, what about this? What about that? What about the tests that showed that red meat causes cancer? What about that test from Walter Willett at Harvard, that study that I saw on CNN and MSNBC that said that red meat causes diabetes? How do you explain that?
It's really terrible. And half of this stuff, I feel like it's only put out for the purpose of, like, this red meat diabetes thing, whatever. It's all put out there just for the purpose of muddying the waters. It's not to prove anything. It's just to get everyone in this state of constant, I don't know what to do, so I'll just continue doing what I've always done.
But people just take those studies at face value. This study said that red meat causes diabetes. So you dig down a little into the study and you find out that if you went to Wendy's and you got a hamburger with a bun and slathered ketchup on it and had French fries and a milkshake, that counts as red meat. They count that meal as red meat. Is it any surprise that meal would contribute to becoming a diabetic? If you go get a pizza and you put pepperoni on that pizza, that goes right into the red meat category. You're eating all that bread. You're eating all that sugary tomato sauce. You're eating all that other crap, which does contribute to diabetes. But because it's got a few little tiny pieces of pepperoni on it, They put it in the red meat category. Is it any wonder? Does anybody even stop to look at it? Does anybody ever stop to look at the fact that Walter Willett is a lackey of the Seventh-day Adventists and the vegetarian and vegan movement in this country? That he is the most agendized and opinionated guy? He and his cohorts? But they don't look at the studies. When you look at the Minnesota Heart Study and the thing, they buried the real data in a basement somewhere because it showed the opposite of what they claimed. And it wasn't until 10, 20 years later that somebody actually found this data, reanalyzed it and says, wait a minute, or the Women's Health Initiative and said, wait a minute, the data showed that the higher their cholesterol, the lower their mortality. That's what it really showed. But that's not what was the conclusions of the study 20 years ago when these agendized people, and who funded this study? Pepsi-Cola? Pepsi-Cola funding? Well, no conflict there. And they paid off 3 Harvard professors when is sugar bad or is fat bad? And we've got the emails now. We know even how much the checks were. Nobody hears about this. They're not letting that information out. No media outlet will talk about it.
It's because it's going to upset their advertisers, right?
Of course, they're funded. And now you've got these huge conglomerates, the food companies, and you've got them paying for the entire industry. They're running the medical schools now. The Advent healthcare system is huge. You've probably got them over there in Europe. They're everywhere. That's the Seventh-day Adventists. They have, just go look on Wiki and say, how many universities do the Seventh-day Adventist medical university? They have hundreds of them all over the world where they're teaching these doctors to be vegetarians and that red meat is bad. And you know, you've been around this long enough to know the story of Ellen G. White and Harvey Kellogg. You know that Ellen G. White started this whole mess back in the late 1800s. After 2,000 conversations with God while she was in a coma, God told her that red meat caused men to have impure thoughts and to masturbate. And we can't have that. And that was the formation of the Seventh-day Adventist Church that is now today the Advent healthcare system. They'd have to drag me into that place in a straitjacket before I'd let them even listen to my heart. It's scary. And
so where do you think this is going? Like, where are we going to be in 20 years from now? Do you think health is going to improve at all?
I think that overall, no. I mean, it's kind of a downer to think that way. As long as people are addicted, are there fewer alcoholics now than there used to be? Are there fewer drug addicts? Has our war on drugs actually accomplished anything trying to fix an addiction? Have we cut into the cartel's business at all after 50 years and the money we've spent? The addiction controls the people. No, not logic, not common sense. It's chemistry. It's chemistry that's ancient. It's chemistry that we have. It's chemistry that is built into us, much like our sex drive. If you have a sex drive and you're a human being, you can't just turn it off. You'll go nuts. You'll go insane. Look at a cat in heat. The drive to eat these foods is that deep-seated in us. It needs to be talked about a lot more. We need treatment centers, counseling, retreats, like they have for alcoholics and drug users. But even then, the recidivism in those places is astronomical. It only works for a very few of them. And I think that the ones that it works for were probably not a real flaming addict anyway, because we all have different levels. I was sadly stuck with a very, very high addiction to sugar. And it took me up until I was 75 years old to finally have all those pieces come together in one of those aha moments, and realize that if I I'd heard a lot about carnivore. I'd been pretty much doing it. I'd been keto beforehand. I went from keto to carnivore. But when I hurt my head and I had to recover from the brain surgery, I gained like 30 some pounds again. And I found myself with more weight than I wanted to carry. And that's when I said, okay, I can't just do this keto thing again. I just can't sustain it. The carb creep comes in. I always find a way to rationalize it. The first video that I ever put out on my channel was a year ago. I've only been doing this carnivore YouTube thing for 1 year. I think I released my first video August the 10th of last year. I've got 370 videos out there now. And I do at least one a day, talking about all of the esoteric and complicated things, the mindset, the motivation, the biochemistry. I do recipes. I find, I review some particular piece of equipment that I found that I like, and it makes my life easier and less complicated to do this, and less cleanup and less mess. I want it to be a no-brainer. I don't want to spend my whole day like some of these vegetarians do, wandering around a store, getting 40 different ingredients in little plastic bags, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, taking them home, laying out 40 different little cups, putting all the ingredients in the little cup. You've seen these guys on the videos just to make a salad. It's a day's work. I don't want to do that. I sous vide most of my meat. I take it and vacuum seal it, throw it in a sous vide for a couple hours, sear it off for a couple minutes in a carbon steel pan with some butter or bacon grease, and I'm eating, and I have almost no cleanup. It's fabulous. Bacon and eggs. I got a big pan. I cook the bacon. I pour out about half the bacon fat into a bacon fat catcher. I put my eggs in. I like an omelet. I beat them up, put them into the bacon fat that's left, flip them over. When they're done cooking and I slide them out of that pan, there is no fat left in that pan. There's nothing in the pan. I don't even have to wash the stupid pan. I take the pan and I wipe it out with a paper towel, and it has maybe a little coating of bacon grease, which is good for it. It's not going to hurt it, and then I put it back on the stove and it's ready for tomorrow. No cleanup. And I have people used to say to me, why do you make your bacon that way, Mitch? Why don't you do it in the air fryer? Why don't you do it in the oven? It's so much easier. And I say, yeah, but I got to clean up after that. If I do it in an air fryer, I got a basket to clean. I got a tray in the bottom to clean. I got up in the lid of that thing where it all splatters to clean. I do it in my pan. It's clean when the food comes out. I just wipe it out with a paper towel. And I made a video basically in there. It was an in-your-face video, kind of like, you want to know why I cook bacon and eggs this way? This is why. Change my mind,
So, on your eating, you're eating twice a day?
I eat twice a day. I found that I need to eat a couple pounds of food a day. Couple pounds. I eat about a pound between the bacon and the eggs. It's about a pound of food, and I'll usually eat a pound of something else, fish or beef. It's too much for me to eat comfortably in one sitting. So I do intermittent fasting. My eating window is 4 to 5 hours. I'll eat my first meal of the day around 11 o'clock, my second meal 3 to 4 o'clock. And then I won't eat again until 11 o'clock the next morning. So I do get some fasting in there. I don't do long-term fasts. I have accidentally a few times when I was just somewhere where there wasn't any food I wanted to eat, and I found it was no problem just to skip a day. which is amazing. That's amazing food freedom that you have. When you're out traveling and you can't find something that you know is going to be good for you, that you can just say, who needs it? I'll eat tomorrow. And you can do that when you're a carnivore. Can't do that when you're living on sugar. They can't go 2 hours without a meal or a snack, and one before bed to top it off. Can't live that way. Can't live that way.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've flown internationally and gone. I can just fast on the plane. I don't have to worry about whether there's weird ingredients in the food and trying to order a steak that hasn't been, covered in sauce or any of that kind of thing on the plane. I won't eat.
Yeah, and they cook their steak. They cook steaks in seed oil, for God's sakes. They'll squirt canola oil on the grill instead of just letting the steak cook in its own fat. They don't know because nobody's teaching them. The average person has a life and they have things they're concerned about. And what we're concerned about isn't in their wheelhouse. That's evident by the fact that when you try to get it into their wheelhouse, they rebel. They're not hearing it. You want to take what away from me? You mean to tell me I can never eat another pizza for the rest of my life? Are you out of your mind? Nobody can do that. I say, well, yes, you can. Well, that's no way to live. It's really the only way to live. They just think you're crazy. They just think you're a nut.
Well, how do people react around you? Has anyone kind of gone, oh, this looks pretty good, Mitch, I'm going to give it a try?
Nobody. I've tried so many times with people I know. I'm almost a hermit now. I don't have interaction with hardly anybody. I can't go out to any social event because it's our entire social structure of the human race is built around food, the wrong kinds of food. There's nothing we do that doesn't have food involved. When you go to a sporting event, the most important thing you're worried about is, what are we going to eat? We're going to take a cooler full of food and beer. You go to a party. Well, who's catering it? What are they serving? Everything revolves. You go over to somebody's house. You all show up with a bottle of wine in your hand, or a cake, or a dessert, or something. Everything, our society is built on a base of sugar right now. And it has settled into that base for the last 60 to 70 years. Most people who are alive now don't remember it any other way. I'm old enough to remember my childhood, which happened at the time where the meat and potatoes started going away and the stuff that came in, the toaster pastries and sugary things, manufactured food, packaged food, ultra-processed food. But they made a science out of it now. Most people don't realize. They don't realize it's the tobacco companies that own the whole mess. Did you know that? Yeah, the tobacco.
Yeah, I heard like Kraft, I think, is owned by Philip Morris or something.
Reynolds Tobacco bought what happened was they got greedy, the tobacco companies. People were smoking, and between you and me, if somebody said to me, well, listen, I'm either going to give up sugar or I'm going to give up cigarettes. What do you recommend? I said, give up the sugar. We never had the mortality rates when people were smoking cigarettes that we have these days. We never had the diabetes, the cancer. We may have had a few cases of lung cancer, but it was nothing like the epidemic that we have today. Now, people look at me like I'm really, you telling me that I should smoke instead of eat? And I say, well, you want to see the data? I'll show you the data. Smoking was less hazardous to the human body than this food that you're eating. Not that that was good for you, but it was less bad. The tobacco companies kept trying to expand their market because it's their business runs on the addictive model. That's how they get and keep their customers. There's different business models. If you've studied business, there's the addictive model. There's a model that I love called the Gillette model. Gillette, the company that makes razors. And the Gillette model is you give them the razor and sell them the razor blades for the rest of their lives. And that's how the cell phone industry started. They gave you the cell phone for free or very little money, but then they charge you $150 a month for the rest of your life for the service. Inkjet printers. They give you these printers cheap as hell, but they sell you this fabulously expensive ink cartridges for the rest of your life. That's the Gillette model. The addiction model guarantees that your customers have to have your product. They can't live without your product. The drug cartels in Colombia, their business is modeled on the addiction model. The tobacco companies had scientists who kept tweaking what was in the tobacco to make it more and more addictive. Then they decided we want to try to addict people at a younger and younger age. And they started going after kids. Joe Camel, cartoon characters. For some reason, somebody finally put their foot down and said, now you've gone too far. And an anti-tobacco movement started. It was all political, all money. Nobody really, like most things, actually had any hardcore beliefs about it. It was just a way for them to gain power, make more money. The tobacco companies are starting to look at the food companies like Kraft, recognizing that their business is also the addictive model. But it's perfectly okay for them to have Tony the Tiger and even go into infant baby formula with their sugar and seed oils and addict these kids right out of the chute. And the tobacco company said, what are we doing in the tobacco business? Why aren't we in the food business? So they did. Same companies, same scientists. The old tobacco company, maybe they're all dead by now, but the original scientists that made the tobacco more addictive went to work on the food, how to make it more addictive, how to find what they call the bliss point, that perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat. And then to add insult to injury, and I always tell people this, they flaunted it in our face. They advertised on TV. Bet you can't eat just one. Bet you can't stop. Bet you can't eat just one. Well, up yours. You know, what are you telling me? That you own me now? That I'm going to lose 20 years of my life and my health because I can't stop eating your product that you claim is healthy? Healthy whole grains, healthy fruits and vegetables, all that stuff's healthy. You never see those words without the word healthy in front of them. It's a travesty, but it's reality. The average person is never going to comprehend the complexity of that, the dynamics of the system that has allowed this to come into being. And we're stuck with it now. It's become conventional wisdom, common knowledge, the way things are. And human beings just get pleasure from eating this stuff, and they're going to continue to eat it. And we're a merry little band of misfits. That's how I look at us carnivores.
I think one of the problems is as well, from what you've just said, it's total sense. It's factual, but if you were to tell a carb addict this kind of thing, then suddenly you're a conspiracy theorist, right?
Of course. They look at you like you're trying to take away one of my life's greatest pleasures. And isn't it sad that eating addictive foods has become one of the greatest, next to sex maybe, one of the greatest human pleasures? That's crazy, but that's where we are right now. And when you want to take that away from people, you're the enemy. You're crazy. I could never do that. I'd rather eat that stuff and die 20 years earlier. And I go, are you here? Are you listening to yourself? Do you know what that death is going to look like as a diabetic, having your feet amputated, being an invalid, suffering tremendously in pain for years and years and years as you slowly die? That's worth the pleasure you get from eating Doritos? And in their mind, they can't say no. In their mind, they're saying yes, yes. I won't give that stuff up. Which is why so many people cling to keto, because they think they can cling to some of that. They can do it halfway. They can still keep some of the sugar and those addictive type foods. If you're an addict, it doesn't end well. And most of us are addicts. And the sooner we start realizing it, like alcoholics have, the sooner we actually have a chance of actually increasing in numbers and not just being the small band of rebels and misfits that we are now, that everybody else thinks is crazy, who have to withdraw from society just to get away from this crap. And that's just a choice that some of us have made. But when you think about it, it's a big price to pay. It's not just what you eat, it's your whole life that changes, your whole social sphere. You can no longer go to these parties. Now, after a couple of years, and if you do stick to it, you will probably lose all your addictions. And I mean, I got invited to a birthday party. One of my neighbors is 105 years old, and I went to her birthday party, and there was a cake there. And of course, the first thing happened when I walked in, right in my face, chocolate cake. I said, no, thank you. Oh, come on, Mitch, just one. I said, no, I can't. I don't eat that stuff. Oh, it's her birthday. It's her birthday. It's not going to hurt you. I mean, this guy was trying to sell me that piece of cake. I finally had to put my foot down. I just said, please, please. I have not had a gram of sugar in 2 years. I'm not going to start now. I do not eat that stuff. Don't make me just leave to get away from it. But I could watch everybody else eating it. It didn't matter to me. But without the food, there was nothing there. The purpose of the party was just to eat like a horse. And that's what everybody was doing, just eating and eating and eating. And what was I doing? I'm sitting there sipping on a glass of water. That's no fun. I can't enjoy social things. I live in a community. They have events at the clubhouse, parties they have bands, and they have food and spreads and everything. I can't eat a thing. They screw up the meat. Even they can't even cook meat without adding shit to it. So I don't go. I just don't go. And it's a tough choice. So you and I, Dave, we're a couple of guys. We're on YouTube. I think you got more followers than I do, but I'm climbing. So, we got people that are watching us, and we're helping people, and that's very gratifying. And let's suppose that you and I manage, when we're done, when we're all finished in this life, we can look back and say, if I counted them all up, I may have influenced 500 people to change their life for the better. That's more than most single human beings could ever claim, no matter what they did. So be proud of that. Be proud of that.
Yeah, true. So Mitch, can you tell us a little bit about your channel? How can we find you, and what kind of videos you've got on there?
Certainly. My channel is Old Guy Carnivore. When my channel was a drone channel, I was Old Guy and a Drone. So I just changed the channel name to Old Guy Carnivore, and that about, it's 77 years old. That about says it all. I have right now, I think, about 36,000 subscribers. So that's not bad for a year, I don't think. And I have this no nonsense, I don't take shit from anybody personality. I would rather blow a viewer away, tell them go away. Do not watch my videos. I just don't put up with disrespect, not at my age, or people that are stupid. where all they want to do is come in and show them that I don't know anything and they're smarter than me. Start your own YouTube channel. Nothing's stopping you. You're allowed to do that. Stay away from. So one of the things I do every Monday morning, I have a rant. It's gotten to be the funniest thing I do. I got a few thousand people that watch it every Monday morning. They love it. I just go off. A couple of F-bombs and 4-letter words come out. I tell people to go to hell. I read comments. I call it comments from morons. I state my independence and the fact that I'm doing this my way. It's not your job to insist I do it differently. You have one power. Don't watch. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. And they like it. They like to see me. Then I come on and I have videos where I do recipes and cooking. And usually when I'm doing cooking, I'm usually talking about something while I'm cooking. I might be talking about biological pathways that are important while I'm cooking breakfast. I do cooking videos, different ways to make meat, different ways to fry things in baking grease with pork rind, coatings, fried shrimp, salmon patties, simple recipes, but really, really good stuff. A lot of people like my recipes. I do walks where I just take a camera and I go out walking a few miles and talking. And that's what I do best. I just have a concept in my head, no script, no idea what I'm going to say. And it just starts to come out. And I end up with a 20, 25-minute speech that is got cohesiveness. It's got an arc. It's got an ending. It's just as if somebody had written it, but it's just off the top. And I love doing that. And some of my best videos, I have no idea where that stuff just comes from. I have no idea where it comes from. I just never pre-think it. I just say, I want to make this point today. So let's just start talking. And I do that. And I have the walk and talk videos. I have 370 videos on my channel so far. I do videos about the rules, how to start carnivore. I think I have, some of my viewers will attest to it, some of the best videos on what to do for the first 30 days that take into account how to not fall prey to your addiction. There are methods and there are things that until I did that, I never succeeded. And I learned that and I harp on that. Little pointers like don't even think about your weight. Your weight doesn't matter. Your weight is not important. Your weight is just there. There's nothing you can do about it anyway without killing yourself. Concentrate on your health. Concentrate on fixing the broken chemistry of your body. And amazingly, your weight will go right where it belongs, all by itself, with no thought or input. You don't need to get on the scale. I tell people to throw their scales away. So I have a number of videos about the first 30 days, the 10 rules of, they're all there. And I'm proud of all that stuff. So anybody that would like to, I'd love to see you. Love to see you watch some of them. Let me know what you think.
Awesome. So I'll link to your channel below. Mitch, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
I had a good time. It was great to meet you finally. I've been watching you for a long time. I kept saying to myself, what the hell's wrong with this guy? He's never asked me to go on his channel. and then I got the email from you and I say, it's about time. I don't know how you do what you do, Dave. I don't know how you interview all these different people. You're incredibly prolific at that, and that's to be admired. So congratulations. You're doing great things for the carnivore community and for the people